So I want to start by having you picture a scenario. It is something incredibly mundane, something you have likely done just a vast constellation of times.
Okay, I am picturing it.
Right. So imagine you are in your vehicle and you're driving home along a perfectly familiar route. You know this stretch of road so well that the turns feel practically carved right into your muscle memory.
Oh, absolutely. Like you could drive it with your eyes closed, practically.
Exactly. And your physical body is performing this. I mean, it's an absolute masterclass in coordination.
It really is a marvel when you stop to consider it.
Right. Your hands are smoothly turning the steering wheel. Your foot is, modulating the pressure on the pedals. You are visually tracking the flow of traffic, naturally slowing down when brake lights flash ahead, taking all the correct exits. It is just a flawless execution of complex machinery.
The sheer volume of sensory input and motor output happening in that scenario is staggering. I mean, the biological systems are completely synchronized with the mechanical ones.
Yeah.
And it is operating almost entirely below the threshold of your active awareness.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It is functioning on pure autopilot. But here's the catch.
Okay.
While your body is executing this perfect symphony of driving, your conscious mind isn't in the vehicle at all.
You're miles away.
You are miles and miles away. You are locked in a phantom, incredibly intense argument with someone who isn't even sitting in the passenger seat.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we all do that.
Right. Maybe it's a coworker or, a family member. You are replaying a grievance from the distant past, or
Right.
you're anxiously anticipating a conflict that hasn't even happened yet.
You're crafting the perfect cutting response.
Yes, you are imagining exactly what they are going to say. And your jaw is physically clenched, your heart rate is elevated, your breathing is shallow.
You are experiencing the absolute full-blown physiological weight of a confrontation that is occurring nowhere except in the theater of your own imagination.
I mean, you are generating a complete biological stress response based on a hallucination.
That is exactly what it is, a
Yep.
total hallucination.
And then suddenly you pull into your driveway, you put the car in park, the engine cuts out, and you sort of blink, and you realize that you have absolutely no memory of the journey.
The physical transit completely vanished from your awareness.
It's gone. So here's the core question we are exploring today, and I really want you to sit with this. In that lost stretch of highway, who is actually steering the vessel?
That is such a profound question.
Right. If your active consciousness was entirely consumed by a manufactured stressful reality who kept the car between the white lines, are we truly awake as we navigate our daily existence? Or are we simply, biological machines running a very ancient pre-installed software program while our actual awareness is fast asleep?
It is a profoundly unsettling question when you really start to pull on that thread.
Oh, it really is.
Because the implications extend far beyond just a momentary lapse in concentration during a mundane commute. And I think our mission for this extensive exploration today is to completely dismantle the illusion of this waking trance.
Yes, that is exactly what we need to do.
We need to examine the intricate, often hidden mechanics of how our internal landscape actually projects the external reality we experience. We're going to look closely at the immense, often completely unrecognized suffering caused by living at the mercy of our subconscious programming.
And it is immense suffering.
It is. And most importantly, we are going to talk about the mechanics of reclaiming the present moment. How to actually wake up in the driver's seat and access a baseline of existence that is incredibly peaceful and powerful.
Okay, I absolutely love where we are headed. But let's start with that unsettling feeling you mentioned.
Okay.
Because the idea that we're essentially sleepwalking through a massive portion of our existence is terrifying, but it leads us to something incredibly revealing about human nature.
Right.
We really have to look at the shocking reality of the unexamined mind. And there is this fascinating psychological phenomenon that was observed in a series of highly controlled trials. The premise was incredibly simple.
I think I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah, it's wild. Researchers placed individuals in a stark, empty room and gave them a choice. Option A, you can sit here in complete silence, utterly alone with your own thoughts, for just a brief fragment of time. No phones, no distractions, just solitary reflection.
Which sounds, on the surface like a completely benign, almost relaxing proposition.
Right, you would think people would welcome the break, just a little peace and quiet. But here was option B. You can push a button sitting on the table, and you will receive an immediate, demonstrably painful physical shock.
So literally the choice between absolute quiet stillness and an acute jolt of physical pain.
And the results of this observation were absolutely staggering. The overwhelming majority of the participants voluntarily chose the physical pain.
Wow.
They actively preferred to shock themselves rather than endure the quiet company of their own internal monologue. When I first read about this, I couldn't believe it.
It is hard to wrap your head around at first.
It is. But, I mean, what does it actually tell us? It suggests that our internal landscape must be a truly terrifying, inhospitable place if we are willing to inflict physical suffering on our own bodies just to escape it.
Yes.
I sort of picture the unexamined human mind as a crowded, chaotic room where a fire alarm is just constantly blaring. The noise is deafening, the panic is palpable, and we will endure almost anything. We will literally reach out and shock ourselves just for a momentary distraction from that internal noise.
That is a brilliant analogy. And it really requires us to ask a fundamental question. Why is that fire alarm ringing in the first place?
Right. Why is it so loud?
Why is the baseline state of human consciousness so fraught with anxiety that we view our own silence as a threat? To understand the mechanism behind this, we have to look at the accumulation of what we can call the conditioned self.
Okay, the conditioned self. Break that down for me.
Well, if we go back to the dawn of the human life cycle, an infant's consciousness is essentially a highly absorbent, uncritical sponge. They are operating in a state of deep, continuous reception. A young child does not possess the neurological filtering mechanisms to say, oh, that is my caregiver's anxiety. I don't need to adopt that.
They just take it all in. They are downloading the entire operating system of their environment completely raw.
Precisely. The environment is the ultimate programmer. If a child's surrounding atmosphere operates on a continuous frequency of underlying stress, well, the child biologically absorbs stress as the fundamental, inescapable baseline of reality.
Oh, wow. So it just becomes their normal.
Exactly. If the environment consistently demonstrates that emotional vulnerability is dangerous, the child internalizes an intense, rigid defense mechanism. And this continuous, uncritical absorption hardens as the eras of a life cycle pass.
So it builds up over time.
It does. By the time an individual reaches the midpoint of their existence, what they so confidently defend as their unique personality or their identity is, in truth, largely just a fixed constellation of programmed emotional reactions, inherited anxieties, and hardwired defensive behaviors.
That is so heavy.
It is a massive, towering accumulation of suppressed, unexamined material.
So when you put that person in a silent room without their phone, without their job, without the external validation.
The silence abruptly removes the external scaffolding.
Right.
And without the scaffolding, the individual is forced to finally hear the absolute cacophony of all that suppressed programming echoing in their own head. The anxiety they feel isn't caused by the silence. The silence merely reveals the anxiety that is always running in the background.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And the painful shock in that context is actually highly logical.
It is.
It provides a sharp, immediate focal point. It gives the mind something concrete to process, drawing attention entirely away from the abstract, overwhelming terror of the conditioned self.
Exactly. A physical shock is a tangible external event. You can point to your arm and say, that hurts. It gives the ego a problem it understands how to solve, or at least how to categorize.
And honestly, this leads us right into the massive illusion that governs almost all of human behavior, the illusion of the exterior.
Yes, the great distraction.
Because if our internal world is a blaring fire alarm, our biological imperative is to escape it. So we develop this universal tendency to seek our fulfillment, our safety, and our peace by frantically manipulating the external world.
We project the solution outward because looking inward feels like walking into a burning building.
Exactly. We build these massive narratives. If I just secure this promotion, if I just find the perfect romantic partner, if I just accumulate a specific magnitude of wealth, then the fire alarm in my head will finally shut off.
But it never does.
No. Constantly focusing on manipulating the external environment just keeps us locked in a perpetual dream state. It is a treadmill that never actually reaches a destination.
This dynamic is the primary characteristic of what we might term the lower mind.
The lower mind, okay.
Yes, the lower mind is the physical, survival-driven, egoic state of consciousness. Its entire architecture is built around a desperate demand for control over a universe that is fundamentally unpredictable.
Right, because the universe is always going to throw curveballs.
Always. But the ego genuinely believes that its safety and its happiness are entirely conditional upon the external environment matching its exact rigid specifications. Therefore, it is continuously pushing the individual's attention outward.
It's always looking outside.
It broadcasts a constant narrative. The danger is out there, the lack is out there, and therefore the salvation must be out there.
It's the ultimate distraction technique.
It is a highly sophisticated, biologically reinforced defense mechanism.
Yeah.
It keeps the individual furiously rearranging the furniture on the deck of a ship, utterly convinced that if the chairs are perfectly aligned, the ship won't sink,
Oh, wow.
all while completely ignoring the structural integrity of the hull below the waterline. The outward projection entirely prevents the terrifying work of internal excavation.
Okay, let's explore the real-world consequences of this.
Right.
Because this desperate need to control the external to feel safe internally, it brings us to a breaking point. I really want to talk about the pressure cooker of suppressed existence.
It is a vital topic.
Because we aren't just doing this individually, we are living under a massive cultural mandate of suppression. I mean, think about how our societal frameworks train us, almost from the moment we can walk, to build this indestructible, polished exterior.
Oh, absolutely.
We are implicitly and explicitly taught to project absolute strength and competence at all times. Vulnerability or any intense, raw emotional release is widely viewed as a fatal flaw in the human machinery.
The societal reward systems heavily favor the stoic, the unflappable, the individual who betrays zero internal turbulence regardless of the external pressure.
Right. If a solitary spark of raw emotion appears, if we feel profound sadness or paralyzing fear or deep uncertainty, we are trained to instantly extinguish it before it can be processed or witnessed by others. We are told to, keep it together, power through, compartmentalize.
Hide the friction.
Yeah, but hold on, let me play devil's advocate for a second here.
Please do.
Isn't there a practical, necessary utility to this kind of suppression? I mean, if we all just surrendered to every intense emotional wave the exact moment it hit us, if everyone just broke down weeping during a complex negotiation or started screaming in frustration while operating heavy machinery, civilization would essentially grind to a halt. We can't just be raw, exposed nerves all day long. So where is the line between having healthy composure and engaging in dangerous suppression?
That is a brilliant question, and making that distinction is vital. It really hinges on the mechanics of awareness.
Okay.
We are not advocating for unrestrained, chaotic, emotional discharge at every waking moment.
Yeah.
There's a vast structural difference between functional composure and the hazardous burial of internal dissonance.
Functional composure, I like that phrase.
Yes, functional composure is an active state of high awareness. It is the ability to feel an emotion deeply as it arises, to cognitively recognize it, to allow its specific frequency to register within your nervous system, and then to consciously, deliberately choose how to respond in your environment. You remain the author of your actions.
So you feel the intense anger, but you actively choose not to flip the table.
Precisely. You process the data, but you select the output. Suppression, however, is a fundamental denial of the frequency itself.
You just pretend it's not there.
It is the psychological act of shoving the emotion into a dark closet and leaning your entire body weight against the door to keep it shut. You refuse to even acknowledge its existence.
Wow.
And the biological truth is that when emotions are relentlessly suppressed, they do not simply vanish into the ether. Emotions possess a measurable physiological energy. They are cascades of hormones and neuropeptides. And that energy accumulates in the physical tissues. It builds into an endless rising tide of internal pressure.
So by suppressing, we are basically ignoring our own internal warning systems.
Completely.
I like to think of this using the car metaphor again. If you are driving down the highway and a bright red warning light begins flashing on your dashboard, indicating that your engine is severely overheating, your immediate response is to pull over.
Right. You halt operations.
You pop the hood, you investigate the friction, you address the crisis. You respect the machine's warning system because you know the consequences of ignoring it are catastrophic. Yet, when our own internal harmony fractures, when we feel the distinct, heavy vibration of chronic unease, pervasive anxiety, or deep, unexplainable exhaustion, we do the exact opposite.
We do not pull over. We accelerate.
We accelerate, we absolutely do. We apply artificial suppressants, we consume endless digital distractions, we reach for chemical numbing agents, or we engage in relentless, frantic busyness to drown out the alarm. We essentially take a hammer, smash the red warning light on the dashboard, and pretend the engine is running perfectly fine.
And the consequences of smashing that light are profound and inevitable. There are countless accounts that illustrate the endgame of this suppression. Consider the universal archetype of the highly successful individual who spends a vast portion of their life ignoring immense internal turbulence. Yeah. They maintain the flawless exterior, they push through the chronic stress, they achieve the external markers of success, but they never allow the internal friction to be addressed. The closet door is kept firmly shut.
I know exactly the kind of story you're talking about. A
Yeah.
person who works endless hours, whose relationships are crumbling, but they just keep saying, oh, I'm fine, I just need to get through this quarter.
Yes.
They ignore the stomach issues, they ignore the insomnia, they ignore the underlying sense of dread.
Exactly. And eventually all that suppressed, accumulated energy crystallizes into a severe, often mysterious physiological crisis.
The body just stops.
The physical body literally breaks down in a systemic failure that completely halts their life. And this illustrates a fundamental law of our biology. The magnitude of unaddressed internal stress will eventually and inevitably overwhelm the physical vessel.
It's like a law of physics.
It is. We operate under the delusion that the mind and the body are distinct, separate entities. They are not. They're a continuous, unbroken loop of frequency and response.
The body is basically keeping the score.
More than keeping score, the body acts as the final manifestation point. Chronic, unaddressed disharmony in the mental and emotional sphere commands the biological system to manifest a physical equivalent.
That is wild.
It is the body's ultimate, desperate mechanism to force the conscious mind to finally pull the car over and pay attention. The systemic breakdown, the illness, the chronic pain, it is the physical articulation of a suppressed emotional truth. It proves that the boundary between abstract thought and solid biology is a complete fabrication. The energy of an unacknowledged emotion will relentlessly carve its path into the physical architecture of the body.
The body finally grabs the steering wheel because the mind has been asleep at the wheel entirely too long.
Wow. That is a perfect way to put it.
Okay, this concept of the internal manifesting as the external brings us to something that is really going to bend the listener's mind. We need to talk about the architecture of reality and the mirror of the world.
This is where it gets truly fascinating.
Let's start with the foundational premise. At the absolute core of all matter, beneath the atoms and the quarks, everything is fundamentally a symphony of vibrations and frequencies. Reality isn't just a collection of solid, inert stuff. It is a massive field of moving energy.
Right.
And the energy we harbor internally, our core assumptions, our suppressed terrors, our deepest beliefs about who we are and what we deserve, that energy is constantly broadcasting outward. We're essentially walking, talking radio transmitters.
And what is truly remarkable here is how the physical environment responds to that continuous transmission.
Tell me about that.
We are heavily conditioned to view the external world as a completely objective, independent theater, a random stage where chaotic events simply happen to us without our consent. But the primary, unyielding function of physical reality is far more intimate and far more confronting.
Confronting how?
Its ultimate function is to act as a flawless, unbiased mirror, externalizing the exact state of our internal consciousness.
Okay, let's really unpack this mirror concept because it's huge.
The environment you consistently experience, the specific situations you find yourself repeatedly drawn into, the recurring dynamics and frictions of your relationships, they do not exist independently of you.
They don't.
No, they are merely reflecting what you fundamentally believe to be true about yourself and the nature of existence. If your internal baseline is a frequency of scarcity and threat, the external mirror will dutifully reflect circumstances that validate scarcity and threat. Reality in this framework has no independent agenda. It is merely an echo chamber for your internal state.
I have an analogy for this that always grounds it for me.
I'd love to hear it.
Imagine you walk up to a mirror and you look at your reflection and you see that you have a massive smudge of dirt right in the middle of your forehead. But instead of taking a cloth and wiping your own face, you get incredibly upset at the mirror. You grab a rag and you furiously start scrubbing the glass. You scrub and scrub, you get angry, you try different cleaning solutions, and you are totally baffled and frustrated as to why the smudge won't disappear.
It is a profound exercise in futility.
And that is exactly how the overwhelming majority of us spend our entire lives. We spend our existence furiously trying to rearrange the external world. We try to force other people to change their behavior. We try to aggressively manipulate circumstances. We try to scrub the mirror, completely failing to realize that the image we despise originates entirely from within us.
Exactly.
If we want the reflection in the glass to change, we have to address the source, casting the reflection. We have to wipe our own face.
That analogy perfectly captures the tragic comedy of the ego's approach to life. And understanding this concept dramatically reframes our daily existence, particularly our frustrations. Let us consider the individuals in your life who trigger the most intense, immediate irritation, anger, or defensive reactions within you. The conventional egoic view is that these people are simply external obstacles. annoyances interfering with your rightful peace.
Yeah, of course.
But if we view reality as a flawless mirror, these individuals are not obstacles at all. They are vital, highly illuminating teachers operating in disguise.
Wait, hold on. The person who aggressively cuts me off in traffic and makes my blood boil, or the coworker who constantly undermines me, they are my teachers.
Absolutely. Because when someone shatters your internal peace, they are rarely introducing an entirely new element into your system. They are merely acting as a catalyst, reflecting a hidden friction or a suppressed belief that already exists entirely within your own consciousness.
That is math.
By observing your fierce negative reactions to them, you are handed an incredibly accurate map. You map the exact coordinates of your unresolved internal programming.
Can you give me a specific breakdown of how that map works? Like practically.
Certainly. If someone's perceived arrogance intensely infuriates you, if it generates a disproportionate emotional charge within your body, it is vital to stop scrubbing the mirror and turn the lens inward.
Okay.
You must ask, where in my own life am I harboring unchecked arrogance? Or, conversely, where do I feel so deeply insecure and inadequate that the mere display of confidence or arrogance in another person physically threatens my equilibrium?
Oh, that hits hard.
The external trigger is just the universe forcefully highlighting a shadow area within your own mind that requires integration. The intensity of your external reaction is almost always directly proportional to the depth of the suppressed issue within yourself.
That is a really tough pill to swallow, because it means we can't play the victim anymore. We can't just casually blame our boss or our spouse or the economy or the driver next to us for how miserable we feel.
No, we cannot.
But at the exact same time, it is incredibly empowering, because if the core issue is internal, the solution is completely within our jurisdiction. We actually have the autonomy to change it without needing anyone else to cooperate.
That is the ultimate freedom.
Which leads us directly into the mechanics of how we actually do this. How do we let go? How do we stop the frantic scrubbing? There is a highly transformative cognitive approach we need to discuss: the technique of opposing forces.
It is a profound mechanism for internal realignment.
Let's break down exactly how it works. When you are suddenly consumed by a heavy negative sensation, or when you feel this desperate, aggressive desire to forcefully control a specific outcome, like, panicking over a presentation or obsessing over a text message, you have to forcefully pause the autopilot.
Right, break the trance.
You identify the absolute positive counterweight to that specific negative feeling, and then consciously and deliberately, you relax your internal resistance to that positive state. You let go.
To understand why this is so remarkably effective, we have to look at the anatomy of psychological suffering. Suffering is rarely caused by the raw facts of an event.
What?
Yes. Suffering is almost entirely manufactured by the ego's violent, rigid demand that the present moment conform to its specific expectations. The pain is not the circumstance. The pain is the intense resistance to the circumstance.
So fighting what is actually happening.
Exactly. The ego stands there demanding, this must not happen to me, or this specific thing must happen right this second. That demand creates an immense, agonizing internal tension.
It's like bracing your whole body against a heavy door.
A perfect visual. By utilizing the technique of opposing forces, you are identifying that bracing friction. If you're experiencing intense anxiety regarding a future outcome, the true counterweight is not a forced artificial happiness.
Right, you don't just pace on a smile.
No. The counterweight is complete radical surrender to whatever the outcome may be. The practice is not to mentally argue with the anxiety or try to outsmart it. The practice is to slowly, deliberately let go of the rigid demand for control. You loosen the white-knuckled grip.
You just let the grip go.
And as you release the demand, the structural integrity of the suffering collapses. The intensity evaporates, leaving behind a clear, neutral space of observation.
I want to use a metaphor here, but I want to stick to our car analogy since we started there.
Let's do it.
When you are resisting the present moment, it is like you are driving down a steep hill, terrified of the speed, and you are just slamming both feet on the brake pedal as hard as you can. The brakes are smoking, the car is shuddering, the engine is screaming, and the entire vehicle is engulfed in friction and heat. That is suffering.
It's exhausting.
It is. Letting go isn't magically teleporting to the bottom of the hill. Letting go is simply taking your foot off the brake. The hill is still there, the speed is still there, but the agonizing friction vanishes. You just roll with the gravity.
That is a highly accurate representation of the physiological shift. And when you take your foot off the brake, when you enter that neutral space free of friction, you encounter the most profound layer of human existence. You encounter what we can refer to as the untouched baseline, or pure awareness.
Okay, tell me about this untouched baseline, because that sounds incredible.
Beneath the powering accumulation of the lower mind, beneath the conditioned fears, the inherited anxieties, and the frantic demands for control, every single individual harbors a core of absolute, pristine awareness.
Everyone has this.
Everyone. This is a state of inherent equilibrium and profound peace that has existed since the very dawn of your consciousness. It is completely untouched by external trauma, it is unaffected by societal programming, and it remains perfectly intact, regardless of the chaos occurring on the surface.
Okay, I have to jump in here and push back.
Go ahead.
Because this sounds beautiful in theory, but it clashes violently with my lived experience. If we all have this pristine, untouched baseline of perfect peace just sitting inside of us, why do we feel so deeply chronically flawed? Why is the universal human experience so heavily characterized by pain, confusion, and this persistent, agonizing feeling of never being enough? How do we bridge this massive gap between the theoretical perfection you're describing and the messy, chaotic, often deeply painful reality of just getting through a Tuesday?
It is the most natural challenge to this concept. And bridging that gap requires a fundamental paradigm shift in how we define our own identity.
Okay.
The deep flaws you perceive, the chronic pain, the profound sense of inadequacy, those elements are entirely real in your experience, but they belong strictly to the conditioned software.
The software.
Yes. They are the accumulated debris, the layers of misinterpretation and defensive programming that the ego has gathered over a lifetime. They are the smudges on the mirror.
Right.
But the hardware, the fundamental witnessing consciousness that observes the pain, the awareness that realizes it feels inadequate, that hardware is flawless.
So the screen is clean even if the movie playing is terrifying.
Exactly. The journey of realization is not a self-improvement project. You are not trying to construct a better, shinier version of yourself by adding new spiritual traits. It is entirely a process of excavation.
Excavation.
You are meticulously removing the dense, accumulated layers of the conditioned software to reveal the flawless architecture that has always been present. You do not need to learn how to attain peace. You need to unlearn the massive, complex systems of belief that constantly convince you that you are fundamentally broken.
Okay, that clarifies it immensely. It is subtraction, not addition. We are chiseling away the excess marble to reveal the perfect sculpture that was already resting inside the block. We aren't building the sculpture.
Yeah.
And once we start chiseling, once we start stripping away the software and touching that baseline, how does that change the way we actually operate in the physical world? This brings us to a massive concept operating from the finalized creation.
This is the turning point.
This is where we shift from just feeling peaceful to actively actualizing a new reality. And the core principle here completely shatters our normal perception. The principle is recognizing that creation is already finalized. All possible outcomes, every potential version of your life already exists right now as a latent frequency.
This requires us to confront one of the most stubborn illusions of the human mind, the illusion of linear time.
We are so deeply conditioned to think sequentially. Past causes present, present builds future. A leads to B, leads to C.
Yes, the lower mind operates exclusively in a linear framework. It obsessively mines the past to construct its identity, and it anxiously projects into the future to attempt to secure its survival.
It's always anywhere but now.
Always. But from the perspective of pure awareness, from that untouched baseline, time is not a sequential line stretching into the distance. It is a singular, infinite point of now. All potential realities, all possible iterations of your existence exist simultaneously as latent energetic frequencies within this exact moment.
I love thinking about this like a massive radio dial.
That works perfectly.
Think about the air around you right now. It is filled with hundreds of radio frequencies. The classical music station, the heavy metal station, the news broadcast, they are all existing simultaneously right this second, occupying the exact same space in the air.
They're all there.
You just happen to have your personal radio dial tuned to one specific frequency, and so that is the music you hear. That is your current reality. To change your reality, you do not have to invent a new radio station or build a new broadcasting tower. You simply have to reach out and tune your internal dial to match the frequency of the reality you wish to experience.
That analogy perfectly illustrates the mechanics of manifestation. And to operate from this finalized creation, to tune that dial, one must undergo a profound internal shift in how they desire. You have completely ceased desiring an outcome from a state of lack.
Explain that difference, because it sounds subtle but crucial.
It changes everything. When you operate from the frantic energy of I want, you are inherently broadcasting a frequency of absence. You are loudly, continuously declaring to the mirroring universe, I do not currently possess this.
And the mirror just reflects that back.
Exactly. The universe, functioning as that flawless, unbiased mirror, reflects that exact frequency of absence back to you. Your reality remains a continuous state of wanting. To actualize a new reality, you must wholly accept the psychological and emotional state of already embodying the desire.
You have to feel it first.
You must shift from the desperate, grasping energy of I want to the profound, grounded certainty of I am. You assume the internal frequency of the wish fulfilled before there is a single shred of external evidence to support it.
This is where we run into a massive wall of cognitive dissonance, though, because the ego screams at this concept.
It absolutely despises it.
The ego says, look around. The bank account is visibly empty. The physical body is in agonizing pain. The relationship is clearly in shambles. How can I possibly tune my dial to abundance or health or love when the glaring evidence of lack is screaming right in my face? It feels like we are just practicing delusion. How do we overcome that friction?
That friction, that intense cognitive dissonance, is the precise threshold of mastery. The ego operates like a highly skeptical scientist. It demands concrete physical evidence before it will grant you permission to feel the corresponding emotion.
Right. It wants proof first.
It dictates, show me the wealth in the bank, and then I will finally allow myself to feel secure. Show me the healed body, and then I will feel vitality. But the immutable law of reality as a mirror dictates the exact opposite sequence.
The mirror has to follow the source.
Yes, the reflection in the glass cannot possibly change before the object casting the reflection changes. You must generate the internal feeling entirely independent of the external circumstance.
So the feeling isn't a reaction to reality. The feeling is the secret engine creating reality.
Exactly. But it is vital that we define what feeling means in this context because it is widely misunderstood. You're not talking about forcing a manic, artificial sense of joy. You are not meant to walk around with a delusional, plastered grin while your life appears to fall apart.
Toxic positivity, basically.
Right, avoid that. The feeling of the wish fulfilled is a state of quiet, profound acceptance. It is the deep cellular recognition that the desire is already a finalized, established fact in the realm of consciousness.
It's the feeling of knowing.
Yes. When a fact is completely accepted, there is no frantic, desperate energy surrounding it. If I ask you right now if you possess a nose on your face, you do not jump up and down with manic excitement screaming, I have a nose! It manifested.
No, that would be ridiculous.
You simply know it. It is a calm, entirely unremarkable certainty. You possess it, therefore you do not obsess over it.
Oh, that is such a brilliant distinction. The calm, unremarkable certainty of a fact. That takes all the exhausting pressure off. So if I want to actualize a reality of deep internal peace, I don't sit there frantically forcing myself to act peaceful, sweating bullets, trying to meditate perfectly. I just assume the quiet certainty of someone for whom peace is already a boring, established fact of their daily life.
Precisely. And this is where a beautifully natural analogy becomes paramount. Let us consider the immutable laws of agriculture. When a farmer places a seed into the dark soil, they engage in an act of supreme trust.
Right.
They do not run out to the field every single morning, drop to their knees, and frantically dig at the soil to verify if the seed is sprouting. They do not scream at the dirt, demanding immediate, visible proof of the harvest.
Because digging it up would literally kill it.
Exactly. They surrender to the unseen processes of nature. They provide the necessary nourishment, they water the ground, and they rest in the absolute, unwavering certainty that the growth is occurring in the darkness. They know the harvest is an inevitability, even when the surface of the soil looks completely barren and empty.
And the parallel to human intention is perfect. When you tune your dial to the frequency of I am, you are planting the seed. You accept the vision as an absolute internal truth. And when you hold that frequency with the magnitude of total gratitude, its manifestation in the physical world becomes as inevitable as gravity.
But you must endure the period of unseen gestation.
Unseen gestation.
Okay. Once you have planted the seed of the accepted fact in the soil of your consciousness, there will be a delay. The old reality, the empty bank account, the disharmony, will likely continue to reflect back to you for a period of time.
That's the hard part.
It is. This requires an understanding of what you are actually looking at. In astrophysics, when you look up at the night sky and see a distant star, you are not seeing the star as it exists in this exact moment. Because of the vast distances, It takes time for the light to reach your eyes. You are seeing the light of a star from the distant past.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes the star itself has already died and collapsed, but you are still seeing its light.
I see exactly where you're going with this.
Your current external reality operates on the same principle. The circumstances you are currently experiencing are simply the dead light of your past internal states. It is the delayed reflection of the frequency you use to broadcast. You must not allow the dead light of the past to convince you to dig up the new seed in a panic.
That is so incredibly powerful. The current reality screaming in my face is just dead light. It's a ghost. So if I get triggered by my current circumstances, if I look at the dead light, panic, and say, this isn't working, I'm still miserable, I am essentially ripping the seed out of the ground, screaming at it for not growing fast enough, and then aggressively planting a weed of lack in its place.
You are instantly reverting your internal radio dial back to the frequency of absence. And the mirror will flawlessly, obediently begin to reflect absence once again. The true mastery of this process lies in observing the dead light. You acknowledge the current physical circumstances without delusional denial, but you absolutely refuse to grant those circumstances the authority to dictate your internal state.
You hold the line.
You remain steadfastly anchored in the frequency of the I am. You continuously water the seed with the quiet assumption of the finalized creation.
This requires an incredible level of ongoing discipline. But it's not the rigid, punishing discipline of the ego. It's more like a gentle, incredibly persistent redirection of your attention. It's like training a very easily distracted puppy.
That is a very compassionate way to view it.
Your mind is going to wander. It's going to wander back to the phantom argument in the car, back to the underlying anxiety, back to staring at the dead light. And when it does, you don't beat the puppy. You just gently pick up your attention and place it back on the frequency of the I am, over and over and over again, thousands of times a day if necessary.
It is the highest form of internal cultivation. And as you persist in this gentle redirection, a remarkable compounding phenomenon occurs. The heavy, dense energy of the suppressed emotions continues to safely vent out of the system.
The pressure cooker releases.
Yes, the furious friction of the brake pedal subsides. The space between your thoughts naturally widens, and as the internal landscape clears, you begin to experience spontaneous, unprompted influxes of profound intuition, mental clarity, and genuine joy that are completely untethered from any external events.
You stop needing a reason to feel good. You just feel good.
Precisely. You begin to experience the untouched baseline, not as an abstract philosophical theory, but as your lived, breathing, daily reality. You realize that the suffering, the immense exhausting efforting, the constant demand for control, these were all unnatural additions. They were burdensome software running on perfect hardware. Stripping them away returns you to a state of profound lightness.
It sounds so liberating.
The individual who operates from this state walks through the physical world with an entirely different gravitational pull. They no longer require the external world to provide them with safety, validation, or peace, because they have sourced those elements infinitely from within their own consciousness.
They have completely broken the trance. They are finally truly awake, sitting right there in the driver's seat. The phantom argument is gone, the radio is tuned exactly where they want it, and the journey itself, rather than just the destination, becomes incredibly rich.
Which brings us back to the ultimate nature of the human experience. We are fundamentally not designed to be passive victims of our own biology. Nor are we meant to be helpless prisoners of our inherited early life conditioning.
We have a choice.
We do. The inherent capacity to observe the functioning of the mind, to consciously alter our internal frequency, and to deliberately command the externalization of a new reality, this is the defining characteristic of advanced human consciousness. It is the evolutionary leap that is available to every single individual right now in any given moment.
I really want to focus on that phrase, in any given moment, because I know how easy it is to listen to a conversation like this and think, okay, this all sounds mathematically perfect.
Yeah.
But I have an entire lifetime of incredibly heavy conditioning. I have a massive accumulation of suppressed trauma. It is going to take me another lifetime of intense therapy and sitting in silent rooms to fix this engine.
It is a very common fear.
But the principle of the finalized creation, and specifically the illusion of linear time we discussed, suggests that liberation doesn't actually require decades of hard labor.
That is a vital realization, and it is where the ego puts up its final, most desperate fight.
How so?
The ego absolutely loves the concept of a long, arduous, highly complex journey of healing. Because a long journey guarantees the ego's continued, centralized existence as the brave protagonist of a difficult struggle. The ego will negotiate, saying, yes, I agree, I am flawed, but I am working on it. Just give me time.
Keeps itself employed.
Exactly. But the untouched baseline we described is not a structure that requires building over decades. It is fully, completely present right now, resting quietly underneath the very thought that insists it will take a long time to find.
So the healing isn't a vast distance that needs to be traveled. It's just a frequency that needs to be tuned into.
Yes.
It's like standing in a pitch black room. You don't have to grab a shovel and manually scoop the darkness out the window for years and years. You just reach over and flip the light switch. The moment the light is on, the darkness doesn't fight back. It's just instantly gone.
A perfect analogy. When you engage the technique of opposing forces, when you completely take your foot off the brake and fully surrender to a suppressed emotion without a shred of resistance, that specific pocket of trapped energetic pressure dissolves in the present moment. The heavy conditioning of the past is only powerful if you continue to actively breathe life into it right now.
If you keep giving it your attention.
If, in this exact singular moment, you choose to tune your dial to the frequency of the I am, the state of total acceptance and inherent perfection, the past loses all structural hold over your current biological and psychological reality. The internal shift is instantaneous, even if the external mirror takes a period of unseen gestation to catch up and reflect the new light.
That is so incredibly freeing. It means the past is fundamentally irrelevant to the sheer power of the present moment. That entire massive constellation of inherited fears, the hardwired defensive reactions we picked up as kids, they only survive if we actively keep plugging them into the power source of our current active attention. The second we unplug them, the machine shuts down.
And achieving this requires the radical acceptance we discussed earlier. You must be willing to look at the entirety of your past, the perceived mistakes, the pain you experienced, the moments of profound unconsciousness where the phantom argument was steering your car straight into a ditch. And you must extend absolute, unconditional forgiveness to it.
Unconditional forgiveness to ourselves.
Yes, the past was simply the lower mind operating on the only limited software it had available at the time. To hold tight to resentment against yourself, or to hold resentment against others for their past actions, is to continuously, voluntarily inject the poison of the past into the pristine waters of your present moment.
It's the old saying about drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Or, in this context, drinking poison and expecting your past self to die. It doesn't change the past. It just severely poisons you right now. Forgiveness isn't about letting someone else off the hook. It's about unclipping the heavy hook from your own flesh so you can finally walk away freely.
A visceral but highly accurate metaphor. And when that hook is finally removed, when the rigid demand for the past to be anything other than what it was is finally dropped, the sheer volume of energy that becomes available for the present moment is immense. You are no longer dragging the heavy anchor of history behind your vessel. This is the exact moment when the true, unhindered creative capacity of human consciousness comes fully online.
Wow. So let's pull all of this together because we have covered a massive expanse of territory today. We started with the deeply unsettling prospect of sitting alone in a silent room and why so many would actively choose a physical shock over facing the deafening fire alarm of their own conditioned, unexamined mind.
Yes, the terror of silence.
We explored how our desperate outward focus, our constant need to manipulate the exterior world, is really just an elaborate escape hatch to avoid the pressure cooker of our own suppressed emotions. We saw exactly how ignoring the red warning light on our internal dashboard inevitably commands the physical body to break down and manifest that stress.
We then entirely inverted the paradigm of how we view our environment, establishing that the external world is not a random, chaotic series of events happening to us, but a flawless, unbiased mirror reflecting our own internal frequency. We learn to reframe those who intensely trigger us not as enemies, but as vital teachers highlighting the exact coordinates of our unresolved programming.
We introduced the actual mechanics of change, realizing the futility of scrubbing the mirror, and instead using the technique of opposing forces to release our internal resistance, taking our foot off the brake. We learned to identify that neutral space, to clear away the software, and to rest in the untouched baseline of our pure awareness.
And finally, we detail the architecture of the finalized creation, the absolute necessity of abandoning the illusion of linear time, tuning the internal radio dial from the static of lack to the clear frequency of I am, and trusting the unseen gestation of the seed. We learn the critical importance of recognizing that current adversity is often just the dead light of a past internal state, and refusing to let it dictate our present frequency.
It really is a complete fundamental reorientation of how to exist as a human being. We are not frail, isolated physical entities struggling desperately against a hostile, random universe just to attain a brief moment of peace. We are vast, infinite consciousness temporarily navigating a physical experience. The external chaos, the friction, the pain we see in the world around us, it is merely a reflection of our internal forgetting.
And the vital reminder for anyone absorbing this conversation right now is that in this exact singular moment, you possess the absolute authority to drop the heavy demands you have placed on reality. You can choose to step out of the hypnotic trance of your early programming, unplug the power from your inherited anxieties, and rest completely in the silent, perfect awareness that is your true nature. The power to shift your reality is not out there in the world. It is entirely unequivocally resting in your own hands.
So I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to carry with you today. We are circling all the way back to the very beginning, back to the car, back to the highway. If the entirety of the external world is simply a physical echo, a flawless mirror of your internal state, well, what happens the exact moment you realize that there is absolutely nothing and no one to change but the observer sitting behind your own eyes? If you finally drop the rag, if you stop scrubbing the glass and the mirror is finally completely clean, what will you choose to project into it?
The canvas is entirely yours.
It is an incredible responsibility, but it is also the ultimate defining freedom. The trance is broken the very moment you recognize you were in it. So keep your eyes on the road, leave the phantom arguments behind, and start driving.